Yo, this episode of Bass Freaks is brought to you by Dunlop Super Bright Bass Strings. Dunlop Super Bright Bass Strings put your sound front and center with a bright yet musical top end, balanced fundamental, and a warm low end. Designed from the ground up to fit the vision of what a string should be, Super Bright Bass Strings provide a superior response that allows the natural voice of your bass to come through. Made in California at Dunlop headquarters, go to jimdunlop.com and check out Super Bright Bass Strings. All right, what's up, my friends? Welcome to Dunlop Presents Bass Freaks. This is a place for us bass freaks to chat it up, gain a little insight and inspiration, and have some fun with some great bass players. I'm your host, Josh Paul, and today we welcome Justin Meldal-Johnsen to the show. MJ, what's up, dude? How are you, man?
Good. It's nice to see you. I wish we were doing this in person, but doing it this way and seeing you this way is nice, regardless.
We're so close, yet we can't touch, but that's okay.
I know.
Virtual high fives, man. Soon enough.
Brother.
So where are you now?
Oklahoma City, in the center of the American universe.
How is it?
It's cool, actually. I just spent 4 days in Austin just previous to this, doing the ACL TV taping, another gig, and a gig in Dallas. And, those feel like the big city compared to this, even though Oklahoma City is like a big city. We rolled in yesterday for a day off, and it's just really calming. It's really calming because there's just, it's quiet. And it's kind of nice to, after you do 4 shows in a row, to have a little quiet stop. But the show tonight apparently is going to be a good one. I mean, in spite of COVID, people are coming to shows and filling up the rooms, and it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. So you're out right now with St. Vincent, and you're out as MD, musical director, and bassist, right?
Yeah, I play bass. I'm the MD. I put the band together, and I also play synth. So that's my job with this scenario.
That's a lot of work. So when's the last time you were actually out on tour, and how does it feel to be back out?
I'm sort of an anomaly. I've been making records as a producer for so long that it's been over 5 years since I've toured. The last tour I did ended in April of 2016. So what's that, 5.5 years with Beck. And since then, all I've done live-wise is like some random one-off shows with Beck and a few shows with this band called The Bird and the Bee that's really hip. It's Greg Kirsten's band and the singer Inara George, and the two of them had this band that they've done for a while. And they're kind of known for very, very clever, like highly orchestrated pop, but also these 2 albums they made, which are covers albums, like a tribute album, one to Hall & Oates and one to Van Halen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're sort of all about like great songwriters that are overlooked as being great songwriters. And so they did this homage to both of those artists. And I played bass on the Van Halen one with Joey Waronker on drums, and it's really sick, actually. And then we did some shows to support it, with Dave Grohl playing drums and some other shows as well. And so that was cool. Did that sporadically over the past, 3 years. Right. In fact, right up until the pandemic started, we were doing some of those shows. But yeah, touring like in a bus, it's been ages, 5.5 years. I mean, I'm mostly a studio rat at this point. And I really, really wanted to change that, because for me, the road is kind of more my natural habitat, to be honest.
And you're feeling all right? Let's talk about the typical day on tour. Give us or on one of your tours that you're on.
Wake up on the bus, crawl out of there like a primordial creature trying to escape the pond and go on to land. That's kind of how it feels, like a prehistoric lizard crawling out of there. Open the bus door, look at the sunlight. You know, again, and then crawl into a hotel day room, get a shower and change, and then it's like, where can I find some food and some, like in my case, like tea, or most everyone else coffee, like immediately, and then go do that, hook that up, and then maybe we have a couple of hours, and in those couple of hours I'm really busy because like I have a record back at my studio that's still ongoing.
Oh wow.
And it's being mixed, so I'm like listening to reference mixes and giving notes and helping the thing kind of move along while I'm out here, and answering millions of emails kind of surrounding that project, and then sound check, and since I'm the MD, I'm kind of running it. And then Annie Clark, who's AKA St. Vincent, she comes in at a certain point, and we do some songs with her involved. And because it's still sort of early days, there are some things we're still like kind of hashing out with the show and with the band. So we'll get into that, sonics, parts, whatever. And then after sound check, it's kind of like finally there's some chill time, and we eat and we start up the backstage music and get hype and put on fun clothes and then do the show, man. And then, the only real difference to all this is we're wearing masks everywhere, except when we're on stage, right? I'm sure it's the same for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then we do the show, and then there's no after show. There's no hang. There's nothing going on.
Are there any must-haves that you need out on tour? Keep you rolling, hanging tough?
My big ass UE boom speaker, like loud ass speaker for backstage. Because okay. I like to play. Yeah, I like to play punk rock for like a good 90 minutes before we play. Like something that gets me hyped.
What are some of the jams you've been rocking to?
Oh man, the Buzzcocks, Wire, Gang of Four, even just classic Pistols, but also like the Damned and Black Flag, Dead Kennedys, Circle Jerks, Adolescents, Descendants, Cro-Mags, Minor Threat, like just Bad Brains, just tons and tons of like early hardcore. That's
love it.
A real love of mine, and so for me it's and some of my bandmates as well. It's like a really nice way to get yourself going.
Absolutely. I love all that music. Yeah. And actually, with I'm a Robot, that's pretty punk rock, right? Your own project. Are you still doing that at all, or?
I'm a Robot always threatens to bubble up and come back.
Yeah.
We have been talking about reissuing the first album.
Cool.
And I'm a Robot is a real strange one, man, because it's one of the only bands I've ever heard of where all 5 original members are totally cool with each other.
Right.
All still making music without any exceptions. And just like friendly. And
what's the secret?
The secret is that we broke up. Meaning there's a time to end bands, know?
Okay.
And a lot of times I feel people go too long before they end a band that maybe isn't meant to stay together, with conflicting interests and stuff. And so I think with a band like that, there was a benefit to, I was the first one to leave, and actually Joey Warnker was the first one to leave, then myself, and then so on and so forth. And I think that's healthy. It's just kind of healthy. And so we're all just really love and appreciate each other a lot.
That's great. You can't really ask for anything more than that.
No. It means if we want to someday, maybe we could play a show, or I don't know. Or just maybe we'll get together at my house and go for a swim and hang out and tell stories. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's nice, you know. I'm one of these people that sort of thrives on the idea that bands and artists should cultivate a little bit. I don't want to say the word mystery, but a certain sense of not being always so accessible and over available to the public. I think that there's a certain value to music artists having some distance at times from their fans so that they can create surprise. And all this access, I think, is really overrated. I think it creates homogenized music, and sometimes a situation where the romance is not there. The romance of like, how do I find out about? Remember, I mean, you remember all the shit we used to read fanzines.
Yeah, for sure. There was a mystique, you know, and a wonder about your favorite rock star, or your favorite band, that, oh, I wonder what they're going to do next, instead of, you know, now everything is, you're right, everything is accessible and it's right there, and everybody wants to tell you exactly what they're doing right before it happens or a year before it happens. So that, and I understand that on a business level, but there's still a cool factor to the mystique for sure. And I agree that it definitely does hinder some organic creativity.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I don't know. It's just it's my taste. I mean, I'm old, so maybe it's just from a lost generation. But like for me, when I first found out about, say, the Cocteau Twins, I was like, okay, first of all, what language is she singing in? Because I don't know what the hell that is. Number two, that's the most amazing guitar sound I've ever heard in my life. How does he get it? Well, guess what? It was 1984. There was no like rig rundown. Right. There was no like, you know, Liz Fraser, you know, doing Instagram stories every day of her singing tracks in the studio. Right. You know. And plus the album covers and the artwork were inscrutable. They were their images were never on them. There was no liner notes. It was all very, you know, cold and distant. But that's just romantic as hell to me. I find that mystique, like, all it made me want to do is love them more and hold them as my own private experience.
Right. That's a great way to look at it. It's some awesome insight on that, especially. I mean, it's very cool. Speaking of which, you are very cool. Your vibe is awesome, not only in your playing, but I mean, just your style, and your style of production. Before we get into that, though, how do you manage your time? Because between now touring and producing so many records and family life, how are you doing it? How do you find space for yourself?
I don't know that I'm busier than anyone else of my peers. I don't know that I'm busier than you. I think that my type of busyness is like always having a record on the boil, and then some other project, be it songwriting or maybe doing sessions as a bass player, which I still love to do. And I will do at the drop of a hat because it keeps me sharp and I need it. And I'll do it for, you know, any compensation, because I'm not inclined to turn something down that I like if it's, for instance, it pays whatever, $100 a song. I'll still do it, you know, because I like it.
That's amazing. You just love what you do.
I love what I do. Money is not an important thing for my life. It's not a guiding principle or touchstone for me. Money is incidental, and it's the only way I can look at it. Otherwise, I think it's kind of poisonous. But to answer your question more directly, and by the way, thanks for the really generous compliment. I don't know if I can live up to everything you're saying, but thank you very much for that.
I mean, I'm being 100% honest. I've been a fan for a long time. So, and by the way, I appreciate you coming on here, taking the time to do it.
Dude, my absolute pleasure, and thank you. That's great. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that people are sometimes wondering. They're like, oh yeah, you're like playing and you're producing and you're writing and whatever. The thing is as a producer, first of all, I'm kind of slow as a producer. I'm not a guy who bangs out a lot of records every year. The most number of records I've ever recorded in a year is 4. The typical amount of records that I've recorded in a year is 2. And it's because I am a real sonic explorer, and I'm also pretty old school. And so I like to take a lot of time in the overdub phase mainly. I like to record things in basic tracks, real bang, bang, and do that quickly in days. But I like to do the other part in weeks and weeks and what ends up being months. And I don't know, it's not really a viable way to make records, but it's the way that I do it, and I somehow make it happen. So I don't know. I mean, in the studio, my days are like 10-hour days, and then the rest of the time is family time. I have 2 kids, I'm married. And then, I get up early, and I hit the day hard, and I answer all my communication really quick, so it doesn't linger. And so I don't get an inbox that's stacked, and, then I can't confront it later. And, I don't know, my mantra is just like, if it's in front of you, get it done right now. Mm. Don't procrastinate if you can. And I don't know, I'm just a spaz. I don't know. I like to be busy. No secrets.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. I mean, it's the way to just dive in and get it done. If let's talk a little bit about creating bass lines. How do you approach that? Because you've some of the recordings that I've heard you do have been just killer. Sex Laws, for one, by Beck.
God, it's so funny. That one always comes back around to me. Sex Laws.
I just loved because I want to hear what your approach was and your thought was while you're doing it. But when I listen to it, I'm just like, wow, that is a perfect blend of sort of old Motown meets just kind of modern cool with a little bit of a spin on it. And it just was the right thing.
So the mandate from Beck on that song was the Sex Laws has this bizarre thing where it's like a boogaloo track. It's like JB style, like really like up tempo, up tempo funk, like Apollo Theater kind of funk,
Yeah.
Almost church kind of vibe, like as in like 60s church,
Uh-huh.
And so it has that as a more obvious aesthetic disposition. But what the undercurrent is that it's also colliding with like chicken pink and like country vibe in it, and you can hear it in the banjo, and the steel that's in there. But when we were trying bass lines, eventually he was like, "Can you do something that's like what would it be if Bootsy was in a country band or something?" And I said, like Bootsy, Parliament Bootsy? And he's like, no, like old, like Bootsy, like James Brown Bootsy. Like, 3 sets a night, up-tempo, dance band, like hardest working band in show business vibe,
Wow.
And so, it moves along at a good clip. I don't know how fast Sex Laws is. I think it's in the 130s or something. I don't know, but it's quick. And the 16th notes are going by real quick. And so I don't know, man. I'm an instinctual person. I'm not really a crafty um, bass line creator. I tend to react um, on in the moment in a very naive kind of way. Like I'm not really thoughtful because I'm not trained. I'm not a studied musician. So all my influence comes from my musical bibliography. It comes from my record collection, from what I was listening to being a kid, what my parents played me because they were just big music heads, all the way up until now. And I'm an even bigger music head. So for me, it's like always somehow just a distillation of my super wide musical taste, not from a standpoint of craft. It's not a crafted thing. So that Sex Laws thing came out real quick. We recorded it in half an hour, and it was just like a reaction. And then the second verse is like this real hyper thing. I'm always at certain times like, how do I emulate a synth bass or a sequence? That's always like a fun angle to my playing. Like, how do I play if I'm like trying to be a Kraftwerk bass line? You follow?
Yeah, I do.
Like that's a real focus for me. And so I've developed a very like rigid right hand like picking style or fingering style that's very like I don't know if Rocco from Tower of Power was in Kraftwerk or something. That's like maybe how I look at it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Some of the syncopation in there is so great. Yeah. So
Thanks.
do you I know you mentioned you're not a quote unquote studied bass player, but do you read music at all?
A little bit, only by virtue of years and years. I mean, I read charts all day.
Okay.
Charts are fine, but notation I'm slow at. I can read it though.
Yeah.
So, but that came from like playing clarinet in junior high and high school or whatever.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So I just like parlayed that later into bass clef and kind of figured it out. But I'm not a fast reader. I'm a slow reader, but I can read. I've had some scary gigs where I've had to read before, like terrifying.
I can't even imagine, man. If I have, well, I have many weaknesses, but reading for me is just very frightening. It takes me forever.
Same. Big time, man. I gotta tell you an anecdote about that, if I can. Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah, please.
So I was hired to play bass for the new version of the Muppet movie, which was about 10 years ago or whatever.
I remember that.
It was like that very charming. Yeah. And so the session was George Deering, who's the most recorded guitar player in film, bar none.
Okay.
And he plays not just guitar, he plays like any stringed guitar shaped instrument. He plays lutes and banjos and mandolin and, all kinds of different stuff. He's like a phenom. And he's, again, in Hollywood, no one's played on more films than that guy. Jim Cox on piano, kind of the similar vibe. And these guys read up and down all day long, sideways, backwards, whatever. And Joey Warner on drums. So Joey and I, who are the rhythm section for Beck on all the Beck's classic albums, were hired sort of together as like a unit. And we have been historically hired a bunch as a unit because we play well together, and we've done a lot of records together with Beck, but also with many other artists. And that's, by the way, that's just a little aside. I pulled him into Ivor Robot, and he was the first drummer for Ivor Robot. Anyway, we're in there. We're at what was then called Ocean Way Studio A, which is now called United Recording on Sunset in Hollywood. And, the producers there, and the music supervisors there, and the composers there, and the engineers there, and the music editors there, and some other random people that look like they're just, I don't know, people on some kind of committee. I don't know what the hell, but they were scary. Anyway.
Committee people are scary.
to people like you and me, they are scary.
Yes, for sure.
So I get there, and the guy who's my buddy, Mickey Petralia, who's sort of the de facto producer of this sessions, is sort of like, oh, dude, it'll be chill. Don't worry. I got you. Everyone's super cool. Like whatever. I get there, man. And it's like, it's fly shit on paper. It's dense. It's very, very, very dense. Oh, and there's scores that are like 10 pages long, taped across 3 music stands.
Oh,
and they're all there. And
that's my nightmare.
Really?
No, I can't swim.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I just like any of us, there have been moments in my life and music where you have to fake it till you make it, right? There are moments like that.
Yes.
And that was the moment for me. That was the moment. And I'm playing this stuff and I'm kind of hanging in there, but I'm sweating, man. And I'm oh my God, I do the first one. It was like 2 pages and they're like, yeah, good guys. That was great. So, hey, Justin, I think we got to go back and punch a couple of things. I was like, yeah. Cool. So they're grabbing me. I'm punching some stuff. And then the second one, I read the whole thing wrong. I read the whole thing. I lost my perspective and I was really on the spot and I lost my perspective and I was reading the whole thing like down a half step and they're like a different clef. I had trouble, or I was a whole step or a half step off. And they started it and they kept starting and they're like, Justin, are you okay? Let's try that again. And then the third time, they try it once, they tried twice. Then the third time I kind of get it. And then I stumble on the second or third bar and I'm like finally starting to orient myself. And then Jim Cox, the piano player, I hear him in his booth. He's tucked away in a booth and I hear him kind of scream at me like, Justin, it's an E flat. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, man. Sorry. And like, he really lost his temper. It was kind of inappropriate, actually. He like kind of screamed at me.
Wow.
And that just added to, like, it was a really brutal session, but guess what? By the end of the session, I got it all and they kept it all. And with a few fixes, I was okay. And it was really, really tough, man. It was just fucking really tough. But then there's other like things like I played based on the movie like Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12 or one of those. And that was like me just basically aping old records and stuff. And that was the basic charts, but mainly just like playing along to old records and read, so film was always really tricky because it's either like a lot of notes or it's like super reactive and easy and more just instinctive,
Gotcha.
But that story I tell you because it's sort of a cautionary tale. Like, don't say you can read if you can't really read, because those people on that session can really read.
I would have gone to my car and cried for at least an hour.
I left there. My clothes were like essentially wet, bro. Like with sweat.
That is crazy. Well, I'm glad, and I'm sure it turned out amazing. Oh my gosh. Who are some of your, speaking of, your record collection, who are some of your influences as a bass player?
They're kind of all over the shop, man. I have a weird mix because I'm such an omnivore of music. I don't really stay in one lane, right?
Uh-huh.
But like, I'd say my number one is probably Peter Hook.
Nice.
I'm a big Joy Division and New Order fan, and I love them actually equally, by the way. A lot of like real heads are like, oh no, just Joy Division, bro. And I'm like, no, I'm a big New Order person.
It's like kids. You can't just love one more than the other.
Yeah. I really love I love Jamerson, even though I can't really ever play anything quite like him. He's always been influential, of course. I would say McCartney, and these are just because they're my earliest musical exposures. And I would always fixate on the bass. Um, Aston, Family Man Barrett, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, he's always been a big influence. Robbie Shakespeare, Daryl Jennifer from Bad Brains, um, uh, dude from The Descendants. Is that Carl Alvarez? Is that who that was?
I'm not sure.
Um, and uh, uh, Dave Allen from Gang of Four.
Oh, cool.
I'm looking up the bass player for the Descendants. It was Carl Alvarez. Carl Alvarez. That was the guy.
Okay.
I love him. Uh, I would say Graham Lewis from the band Wire, because he's such a creator and a weirdo, like tonally and approach wise. I like people like that who are very non-traditional and every time they play the instrument, they're almost trying to dismantle it, and you can hear them pulling it apart in their mind, and they're not structured. And I just love that. I love people like that.
I do too, man.
Also like really legendary old school session cats like Dave Richmond, who played on all the Serge Gainsbourg albums. Joe Osborne.
Oh yeah, Joe.
I don't know. That's a little slice of some people that I've always referred to, for sure.
All great, all huge influences for me as well, for the most part.
Tina Weymouth.
Oh
of course.
yeah.
How can I forget her? She's really in my top 5, to be honest. So Tina's big for me. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome. I want to get into gear in a second, but your work as a producer is very awesome as well. I think I tweeted you years ago when it came out, but the Paramore record that you produced, the first time I heard that, I was like, that's got to be a bass player that produced this, because everything just sits like it should, at least coming me listening to it. So kudos to you on that. But how do you think that being a bass player informs your production, or vice versa?
I don't really know. It's a hard one for me to answer. I know it does.
Yeah.
Because it's natural, but I don't really know in what ways it manifests. It's almost up for other people who listen to the music to tell me how it does. But like on the Paramore, are you referring to the After Laughter record that came out about 4 years ago? Is that the album you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that's the one I ended up being the bass player on as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Cool. Yeah, because the first Paramore album I produced, which is a self-titled one, it's just called Paramore.
Yeah.
That has like that song "Ain't It Fun" on it and stuff that. Yeah. That's Jeremy Davis, who was the original bass player. That's him playing bass.
Right.
Him and the band parted ways, and then I ended up being the bass player on After Laughter, which is the more recent one. Anyway,
cool. You produced it though as well, right? That one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good job, man.
Yeah, I produced it and played bass and did my usual thing where I'm usually playing a lot of synths and stuff too.
Yeah. It's very cool. I mean,
and
the approach is, there's just a coolness to it that it could have gone a different way, I think. Maybe a little, I don't know how to describe it. It's just a sort of alt indie type of approach to it that really shines through. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I can hear it.
Well, that's great. I mean, the thing with that album is that I was confronted with a band that was having a big seismic shift in their style. Okay. I mean, they were exploring almost like 80s funk influence, like pop production in a way, in terms of their, like in some songs I heard a demo for them almost sounded like it could have been like a old school, like, Janet Jackson, like a who are the dudes that like produced all the like really big like New Jack Swing records?
Terry Lewis, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah, like some of the original demos I had heard that preceded After Laughter were almost influenced by that genre, and
I love
it
that
was
stuff, by
surprising
the
to
way.
me.
Yeah.
That's dope. I think it's great, and I think frankly, it's finally getting its due. Um, People are referring to it more and more because it is truly genius.
Yeah.
But the Paramore people, the guys were like Taylor York and Haley Williams. They were ready for change, and they were writing it that way. And a lot of people, when that album came out, were sort of like, "Man, you really changed their sound." But actually, I didn't change their sound. I documented their sound.
Huh. That's a great way to put it.
And I helped them. I just, I'm not there to like, make them different. They were ready for it. They were very decisive and clear about what they wanted to do, and their demos were fully fleshed out, for instance. And so I would know, like, oh, how do I get some of that feeling? Like part of the bass's role in that album is to be like this thing that finds key moments and then gets out, and then jumps into key moments and gets out. It's like not it's rhythmically very jagged. It's jagged. It's not smooth. It has like it's smooth, but it's not. It's like it jumps in and out at weird moments, and it's quite syncopated, very syncopated. And that was sort of the influence. It was that, like if you listen to something like, I don't know, like early, like Janet, Rhythm Nation, or Control, or like, or like the great Scritti Politti record, Cupid and Psyche 85, which is that very, very minute, jagged kind of funk, pop funk, where like everything has its place, but it's all really interpolated and kind of all somehow arrives at a nice cohesive thing. But if you soloed one thing, it'd be like, then somehow, it interpolates really well, and it becomes this beautiful, like irresistible, like flow,
Yeah. Can't help but smile.
You can't help but smile when you hear that stuff,
Yeah.
I was listening to that, like that song Perfect Way by Scritti Politti. I was listening to that the other day. I was like, my God, is there any more masterful pop from the 80s than this? I don't know. And that was part of the ethos. The other part of it was like, being influenced by things like Gang of Four and Television and Talking Heads, a lot of like post-punk. And so putting all that stuff together, that's what made that Paramore thing come to life. And as when it was time for me to just play bass, I sort of have to pat my head and rub my stomach because I'm running the session and I'm playing the bass, and I'm watching everyone else's take, and it was recorded live, by the way.
Oh, so, really? Like, oh, awesome.
Oh yeah. It was done as a band. With me kind of shoehorned in there. And Zach, the drummer, who's an utterly phenomenal talent, has his own sophistication and taste that he was bringing in too. So anyway, point is, it's just kind of like, I'm playing bass from a producer's vantage point, in that I'm trying not to overplay. But on the other hand, that record does have a lot of what some people might characterize as overplaying, because actually that was the mission. It's very syncopated.
Yeah.
So that's the mandate, like if the mandate is to play real low key and have the bass be almost just part of the concrete underneath the whole thing, great. But I'm pretty flexible. If it needs to be more hyper, like that Paramore album, then that was what it needed.
Awesome. You are versatile, and you definitely play, from what I've heard, what is right. So that's amazing. You think producing a band is much different than producing an artist?
Yes, mainly because when I'm producing a band, I feel like I have to worry about less. I feel like I can do a lot of pre-production to get things to a nice point, and then in a way I can zoom out and have a bigger picture listen, and I don't really have to like worry about how someone's doing the job, because presumably I've done my job and prepared them before we're burning studio time. And there's been enough pre-production to where everyone knows their parts, everyone knows what instrument they're going to use, and within, some parameters of change, but basically they know, right?
Right.
And so you presume that as a producer, especially like a more old school minded producer like myself, that when you're going in there, all that stuff's kind of laid out and known before you're spending their money.
Yeah.
So because of that, when I'm producing an artist, it doesn't work that way, because I'm usually like working with either other people I'm hiring as session musicians, or it's very skeletal and I'm playing everything. So I can't zoom out. I'm always zoomed in. I feel like I always have to focus on this minutia because I'm not really capturing a performance as much. Okay. I'm assembling things piecemeal. Or even when I'm not, and I'm hiring a band to be hiring musicians to be the band, I'm still really hyper focused because they just came in that day, or maybe we had a day to rehearse, but normally it's not as, you can't really afford to have like really good session musicians on deck for a week in a shitty rehearsal room trying to get it all together.
Right.
You're paying them to be in the room right now and react to the music right now and do their thing. So all I'm saying is that when you're producing an artist versus producing a band, I tend to be more absorbed with details and less out capturing something quick that's more of a impulse, You
have a preference?
Oh yeah, I'd say I definitely prefer recording bands.
Okay.
It's by far more also because I like the idea that sometimes a band can put their personality down on tape, and then I can mess with that personality. I can like take the whole picture of what they gave me as the basic track, and I can manipulate it and do things with it that they are surprised by and that are fun for me. But yeah, I like the spirit of a band. I like the idea that there's like a history and people are in a room together and there's electricity and there's tension and there's not, I like that shit. That's like what I grew up on. Whereas with an artist, it's a bit more like, oh, well, here's the person that's playing drums for you. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. There's no,
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? There's no like, there's no history there. There's no like, I don't know. Tension is a word I'd use. So I like recording bands.
Awesome. Let's move over to gear, because you have some very cool vintage basses, rare, cool basses, and let's talk a little bit about it. First, why the fascination with short scale basses?
I just like that rubbery tone, man.
Yeah.
I just dig that like slightly hollow, the series of harmonics over each note is a little different. There's less fundamental sometimes, depending on where you are in the neck. You know this.
Yes.
And then the harmonic series that you kind of pull apart with your ear that you hear, who knows what it is? You'd have to like look at it, and with some equipment or something to see what it is. But what I'm saying is, you can hear it immediately. You're like, that's that certain, I don't know, sometimes cardboardy, rubbery tone that's just charming. I don't know. I dig that. I dig the idea, and I like the way that your hand bends the strings differently. I like the feeling of awkward, slightly pitchy. There's just, I don't know. There's like extra sauce in there, man. It's like spicier sometimes.
It's a vibe for sure. I actually have one of your signature basses.
Oh my God, yes.
I love this bass, the Mustang. But I play this actually quite often. I actually played that on one of the Suicidal Tendencies records.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it kills. So I love that bass.
Man, I'm so stoked you like it. Yeah, and by the way, if people go over to your Instagram, they can see some pretty serious damage that you've done with it, man. You
Oh,
wrecked that thing, man. You are incredible. I
thank you,
wish I could
man.
play like you.
Oh, stop. I appreciate the compliment. It means so much coming from you. So how did you become a collector of some of these awesome basses that you have, and which one is your favorite?
I I don't know. I mean, how does one start collecting gear? I don't know. You just like land on one thing and it's
Was it something that you
maybe
just
it's
were
it.
like, oh, I have this, but oh my God, what's that? I need that. Oh, that shit is cool. What's
Yeah,
next? Is it like
sure.
domino effect?
It's a domino effect. It's pretty unforgiving, and you have to prepare yourself for a long, crazy ride. Um, the first like really nice, cool vintage thing I bought is a bass called a Vox Cougar, which is like a hollow body short scale from the 60s, super skinny neck, made in Italy, single coil pickups, hums and buzzes like hell. Um, but man, the tone, I recorded this Beck album called Mutations with it.
Yes.
And it was one of the first vintage short scale hollow bodies. It is the first vintage short scale hollow body I ever bought. And the strings had no sustain. And the note is just like this long. It's like, doom, like maybe like a quarter note and a half max. That's all you get.
Wow.
Um, and I just was like, but then when you palm mute it and you're plucking it, or when you're thumbing it and you're getting like that, like it's so uprighty or it's so clicky. Either way, I just fell in love with that, especially being a fan of like French pop from the 60s and 70s,
Oh,
Serge
cool.
Gainsbourg, Franz Gall, like any classic French pop. It was always the tonality of the bass very appealing to me, and that was the starting gun, right? And I have Beck to thank for getting me into that headspace. And once I got into that, I was just like, oh man, there's other ones and they're affordable. All right, so what's this other guy? And then like I would chase down other weirdo hollow bodies mainly because that became the first thing I started collecting, you know. Um, and I have so many now. I mean, it's just nuts. But a
What?
favorite shit, I don't know. I mean, my favorite bass is probably like my 66 Mustang that the signature is based off of, but also I have a 66 P bass that I play all the time with really ancient flats.
What do you have
Um,
out with you right now?
so I have my 75 root beer P bass. That's like my other favorite bass. And
Okay.
I always have that set up with round wounds, and it's real bright and it's real nasty and it's mid-range city. It's just like, it just screams at you, you know?
I love it.
um,
Love it.
I love that damn bass so much. I have my Hofner Club, which is another hollow body that I use all the time. I love that bass so much with those pyramid strings. 70s Gibson Grabber, a two JMJ Mustangs, a blue one that has flat wounds, a blue one that has round wounds, a black one that has flat wounds, so I can have both types of dark and bright kind of thing, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then I think there's one more. Oh yeah, my Guild Starfire, which is a hollow body that has been a favorite of mine for years, and it's the main bass I've used, I think, on like Beck's Mutations album. It's also the bass on, like, for instance, you mentioned Sex Laws. That sound is that bass, and that bass is still hanging in there, and it's on the road with me right now. Yeah, love that one.
Killer. What about amps?
Oh man, I'm an amp guy through and through. I think I'll be pretty sad the day that I'm on a gig where they're like, yo, you have to use a Kemper.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to do that either.
Right? I
I
just
say no. Just say no. No offense,
I don't know,
Kemper.
man. It's I don't know. I mean, I use a Kemper in the studio sometimes for demoing and for getting ideas, and I find it really useful for guitar, for instance. But anyway, I'm not mad at that. It's just that for me, I can't do it. So right now on the road, I'm using this Sun head. It's a 2000S. It's like from 1971. It's ancient. It just was redone. It sounds fucking beautiful with a 215 cabinet because I'm obsessed with 15s.
215. I got to get into 15s, man. I really do.
That's really my thing. 15s are my thing. But what are you missing out of your 10s that you would want that you'd want? Like, why would your sound seems dialed, but what are 10s not giving you, for instance?
I think that the 15s could add some of just the girth, some of the jumbo that I want to feel. I like the 10. I use refrigerators, 810s, but I feel like I can stand to thicken it up a little bit.
Okay, well, like for instance, when I'm playing a hollow body or a short scale through the 15s, that's exactly the thing, because it seems to give me just that pillowy, round, beautiful, creamy low end, But also 15s have this spikiness on top that's kind of cool because it sits right in the attack zone. It's not bright, and it's probably for a lot of people not bright enough, but it's like that 4K, 5K, like just spanky bright, low treble, low treble zone.
Yeah.
It's just aggro, I love that.
I love it too. I am a huge fan of just nasty. I
know you are. You really are.
I just dig growl and just experimentation, So you mostly play flats, strings?
I don't know. I mean, there's two basses that have flat. There are three basses that have flats and two that have rounds.
Okay.
And I play the two that have rounds maybe more in the show right now than with St. Vincent. So I don't know. I mean,
is there a particular brand that you use?
Yeah, I use D'Addario Chromes like crazy. But the thing is that I have basses with all kinds of other stuff on them. I have like, I've got this new bass, a short scale that just came called a Wildcock that I don't have out on the road with me, but it's just
I saw that picture that you posted of that. It's very cool.
Yeah, but that just has Dunlop flats on it, and it sounds great. And then there's other basses I have that have ancient ass like labellas. There's like basses that have pyramids. I mean, I generally just try not change them. So if there's a bass with flats around that I bought and it's like a vintage bass, I don't know what it has on it.
That works as long as it works.
Yeah.
That's great, man. What advice? Let's talk about effects, because I know you love some effects as well, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty cuckoo for that stuff.
What are your go-tos, or what are your favorites?
Oh man, I don't really have go-tos, but like I love phaser on bass. So like in the studio I use like an old Mutron biphrase, like the big purple guy.
Okay. Yeah.
I use that thing all the time. But there's some modern equivalents that are cool that actually fit on a pedal board. I use phaser a lot. I use tons of dirt. I mean, I have like right now on the tour that I'm on, I have like I have 6 different layers of like dirt and drive and stuff. So
and you're combining them for different textures, or are you?
Yeah, okay. I combine them, or I use them. Like one bass will use one that's just for it, and then or a certain song, and then 2 of them are fuzzes. So I don't know. There's this the main go-to pedal for me is this pedal by Way Huge, and it's called a pork and pickle.
I love that pedal. I have one too.
Oh, you know it. Oh, you have a pedal. Okay, cool. Well, you know that. I mean, man, it doesn't. You know how like it became really trendy for like bass drives to have lots of tone controls, like bass, mids, treble, and stuff.
Yeah.
This doesn't have that. It just has tone. It's like old school. But what's cool about it is I'm never lacking low end. I'm never feeling like it saps any low end out, right? And so
Mhm.
because of that, I feel like it's just such a useful weapon. I had heard, by the way, that that pedal has switches inside that you can change some settings. Do you know if that's true? If there's some extra switches
Uh,
inside?
yeah, that is true actually. I've
Okay,
never
because I've
opened
never
up.
explored it.
I've never opened. I haven't done any surgery on it, but
Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah, that is true. I can confirm.
Any nice. So that pedal's great. Like for instance, I have one of those on my board that's set to drive, and then one of them set to fuzz. Because
You
I
like
have two.
you like fuzz or overdrive better?
I there's no better. I just use them both all the time.
Okay.
And I have a signature fuzz that I made with that company Moleko.
Oh,
It's
cool.
called the Diabolic, and it's kind of based on um, a pedal that they did previous to that called the Ass Master, and then one before that called the Brass Master.
Very
Um,
cool. What are the differences?
yeah. Well, the Brass Master is a pedal from the 70s that was made by, I believe, Maestro. And
Okay.
it's a really cool fuzz because it has this it has like almost a cutoff envelope in it. So in other words, it's very touch sensitive, and as you play, as you dig into it, it feels like it's going and it kind of opens up the top
Okay.
end as you play with a heavier dynamic.
With a
And
sort of
that's what
filter-esque, maybe?
you can barely perceive it. It's
Okay.
barely there,
All right.
but it's kind of there and it's baked into the sound. And so they made a large pedal called the Ass Master that was an homage to the Brass Master,
Got it.
which I used like live with Nine Inch Nails and stuff. And then we were trying to figure out like how do we make a small one that fits on people's pedal boards that's like good for bass. So we made this like a bunch of years ago, and it ended up being pretty successful actually. And it's on my board all the time. It's a nasty thing, man. It's dirty. It's so filthy. And it has way too much gain. So in other words, like I have the knobs barely on and it's loud. It's so loud. So it's a nasty beast. That's
Nice.
always going on. I really like phase and chorus, man. I use phase and chorus a lot. I use delay and reverb a lot. I use a lot of pedals that are quote unquote more of the guitar domain, but I've always rejected that idea. I use pitch shifting. I use like the whatever. I use all kinds of shit. My favorite chorus pedals, I have three, and I will tell you about them right now.
Okay.
And two of them are unattainable, and one of them is attainable. All right.
All right.
They are here. They are, and I love chorus on bass. It probably all started with Peter Hook, but here it goes. The number one chorus pedal for me is the Electro Harmonix not the Holy Grail, the Clone Theory. And the Clone Theory, if you find one, they're pricey and it may not work for long because there's some parts that to repair those that are unobtainium at this point.
Okay.
But it is the sickest chorus there is. But there is a pedal there's two pedals that kind of do that sound. One is a pedal from Japan, a company called Providence, and they make a pedal called the Anodyne, which is the Anodyne bass chorus, which sounds incredible. But that is hard to get, super expensive, kind of unattainable. Can't even get them in the US. Wow. There's another pedal, and by the way, yeah, this is the one for me because it's affordable and it has lots of controls. It's the MXR bass chorus.
Yes.
And the blue one. It's phenomenal. And frankly, it has that Peter Hook character. It can do the Clone Theory sound. It's so damn good. So those are my top three, and I use chorus a lot. And then I use an Empress phaser. I love that phaser. And I use also my other favorite phaser is that's on my board is a Van Halen one, the Phase 90 with the Van Halen stripes on it. Yeah. It's really good for bass. It's really good for bass.
So sick, dude. I love it. Do you have?
Anyway, I could go on about that shit forever because I have hundreds of pedals and I love it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. That's sort of the general idea.
Okay.
You know,
I mean, that's a ton of great information and I think some inspiration for people listening as well. What advice would you give some young bass players out there listening, or any bass players out there listening? I
think that it's pretty vital that you have flexibility. And I don't think that, I think that like maybe in the 80s, someone could just be a rock bass player and maybe that was all they did, you know?
Yeah.
I think over time that's really borne out to be really not a viable career path as a bass player. I think that you have to be flexible. I think that people just saying like, well, I just do R&B. I should do R&B and funk, and that's what I do. I think that thankfully I'm seeing a lot of people stepping away from that lane and becoming a lot more like earnestly absorbing the music of other genres, not just as a musician, but as a listener, as a music fan. It's really important for bass players to be music fans and to be music fans of lots and lots of music with lots of range, because that's how you will inform a broader taste. And a broader taste in this world will get you a lot further, in my opinion. The other thing is that, like, it's easier for me to say that I'm not necessarily a technical bass player, because some people would say I am a technical bass player, but I'm certainly not. I'm not a shreddy, very studied or sophisticated bass player. There's many bass players, many of them just all over social media, for instance, that makes a living seemingly just living on there, that can play circles around me. And that's the truth. And I'm not, there's no competing in that world. It's just too much talent. There's too much raw skill that's showing itself. And I would just urge bass players to be like, yo, that's cool if you want a career in social media, but like, I don't know if you're going to like go play with St. Vincent or whoever, like, because you're like a YouTube star,
right?
You know, or whatever, or because you post sick videos in Instagrams and Instagram have 1 million followers because you're like super technical or whatever. Like, people hire you because of your heart. They hire you because of your heart. They hire you because of the taste that is informed by your heart. And that's the stuff that matters. That's the long haul stuff. That's the long distance running. So, you know, sure, practice, and sure, you know, have a skill set that sets you apart, but also like be a sophisticated music listener. It'll get you farther than anything else, to be honest. I'm telling you this from very personal experience. If you're a sophisticated music listener and can understand every reference that's thrown at you, and even supply your own references that might contribute to the same conversation, say with a producer or an artist, you're way ahead of the game. And it's much more important than, you know, how shreddy you are or whatever. Like, it's just, you know, that, dude, you know all about this. It's not a competition. You're not playing something from the standpoint of an athletic pursuit. It's soul based. It's heart and soul based. I know that when I see it. I saw that in you. It's obvious that you're one of those players that is thinking of it and feeling it strictly from heart and soul. You're not trying to fucking do push-ups with your bass. You know, you're not lifting weights with your bass. You're reacting musically and instinctively. So that's the stuff that gets you much further down the road than you could otherwise. So I just urge people to think in those terms. Think about your musical bibliography. Think about, is there an area that I'm ignoring that I might find something to like in, that I'm maybe just I'm too ignorant of because of whatever reason. And maybe I should dip my toe in there, because who knows, that might help me someday.
Man, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that all right there, because that is some awesome truth right there that you're throwing out there. I appreciate
Cool.
you, man, for being on here. Is there anything coming up that you're excited about, that you want to let everybody know about, or that you're working on?
Well, I'm finishing a record that I can't say anything about, and yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing
unfortunately,
that, whatever it is.
yeah, whatever it is. So it's just something I'm working on right now. But other than that, my plans are to like, I've got all kinds of random stuff with Annie with St. Vincent coming up, and I people come out and see us because it's sick. It's pretty sweet because I put this band together very much from the musician's mind frame. Like it's extremely old school. There's no samples, there's no tracks, there's no nothing. It's just raw musicianship. And Mark Juliana on drums. I mean, come on, it's so insane. So I and Jason Faulkner on guitar, Rachel Eckroth on keys. It's really, really deep. And Annie's such an incredible guitar player. Man, people are seeing it and being like, what? Like, 'cause it's almost like you don't see that kind of thing too often,
I got to see that.
especially in kind of that sort of like general alternative rock world.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's nice. So I'm doing that. We got dates next year. Hope people come out and see it. There's stuff popping. We're going to play more. And thankfully, until someone says you can't tour anymore, we're touring. And I'm really grateful because there's a lot of people that are not touring right now and haven't gone out yet, or maybe started and had to go home. So, for now we're cool. And I'm really grateful. And I hope to see some people out there,
Right on, dude. I'm grateful that you gave us your words of wisdom and advice. Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words right now. That I appreciate you, man.
Oh man, thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate that. That's very kind. I'm just trying to speak my personal truth about stuff, and I'm glad you let me come on here and do that.
I'm thankful for you. That's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. Stay healthy and kind. Spread love, good vibes, and inspiration. And remember, you got this. Follow your path and just play. I'm Josh Paul. Hope to see you all out there sometime soon. And thank you to Dunlop for making the show possible. And make sure you check out Bass Freaks wherever you get your podcasts. Cheers.